I had profound concerns about the character of Sir Keir Starmer when he campaigned for arch-socialist Jeremy Corbyn to become Prime Minister, which would have been an economic and national security disaster for the country. He called Jeremy Corbyn a friend and sought to place into Downing Street a fringe figure from the left who presided over rampant anti-Semitism and who refused to say on record that he would press the nuclear button if this country was invaded. I had profound concerns about the character of Sir Keir Starmer and his contempt for democracy when he effectively campaigned for a second referendum after Brexit. I had profound concerns about the character of Sir Keir Starmer when he blindly supported the ruinous and, in my view, completely failed experiment of lockdowns. In fact, he called for more. I had profound concerns about the character of Sir Keir Starmer when, after the appalling riots in Southport in July, he allowed a perception to take hold that anyone concerned about mass legal or illegal immigration was far right. And his nickname, Two-Tier Keir, was not earned by accident. With his willingness to condemn some forms of hatred and disorder, as seen during those riots in July, but not the so-called peace marches every weekend, which the editor of the Jewish Chronicle called a festival of Jew hate. Not to mention his decision to signal his virtue and take the knee after multiple police officers had been physically attacked and injured during the BLM riots. I had profound concerns about the character of Sir Keir Starmer when he accidentally forgot to wear a poppy whilst filming a video for the British Muslim community, even though he'd been wearing a poppy earlier that day. Starmer interfered with our parliamentary democracy by convincing the Speaker of the House to drop an amendment vote on the Gaza ceasefire to spare himself a Labour rebellion, though he said it was to protect MPs from being attacked. I had profound concerns about the character of Sir Keir Starmer when he ignored Labour MP Rosie Duffield for months on end, whilst she suffered horrific abuse and attacks from within her own party, eventually having to avoid going to Labour Party conference altogether for fear of her own safety. No support from Starmer, no condemnation for those attacking her, when she took the perfectly sensible view that you can't change your biology and that there are two sexes. But then this is a man who said that the statement "only women have a cervix" is not right and something that you shouldn't say. I had profound concerns about the character of Sir Keir Starmer when he failed to focus on policy during those TV leadership debates with Rishi Sunak. He seemed to think that his main qualification for power is that his mother worked in the NHS and, yes, his father was a toolmaker. At one debate, when he mentioned the toolmaker line for the millionth time, the audience naturally just burst into laughter. Now, later, showing his, in my view, devious nature, he claimed that it was an individual laughing, not most of the crowd, and he said that they were mocking his father for having a lowly job. That's not true. That was a deliberate and dishonest interpretation of what happened. And now it emerges that Sir Keir Starmer took over £100,000 worth of freebies, with this graph showing that he has taken the most donations by a huge distance of any Member of Parliament since 2019, in spite of being a millionaire himself. This champion of women's rights took down a portrait of one of the greatest politicians of the 20th century, Margaret Thatcher. He claimed that that's because he actually doesn't like to be in an office where there are portraits looking down on him. Except that following a Freedom of Information request, it turns out that his House of Commons office was full of political portraits. So is he a liar? I don't know. I couldn't possibly say. But what does this next clip on ITV News tell you about Sir Keir Starmer's character?
Great British Energy already up and running and making decisions.
So we're making the legislation for Great British Energy hasn't been passed yet.
No.
Oh dear, that's awkward, isn't it? I had profound concerns about his character when asked in a TV election debate with Rishi Sunak that if his family was seriously ill, and it was the only option, would he go private? And he said no, which is either incredibly heartless or a flat-out lie. You decide. So what will Sir Keir Starmer's legacy be? Well, I dread to think, as we've got another 4.5 years of this to go. This doesn't feel like a country at the moment so much as a hostage situation. I wonder how many of us will come out in one piece as this new regime taxes us to oblivion, assaults business with red tape and extra costs, sends millionaire wealth creators abroad, taxes elite education, allows unchecked wokery in our public institutions, gives everyone in the public sector an unaffordable pay rise, and bets the house on flaky renewables. And he's on the run today with no TV interviews at the very beginning of his party's conference. That is unprecedented. Instead, Sir Keir has sought to distract us from his political woes by introducing the world to his new cat, Prince. He looks like an absolute pussy to me, and I don't think much of the cat either. Meow. So your thoughts, your reaction, please. gbnews.com/your say. For many years now, all those years in opposition, I've had my doubts about the character and judgment of Sir Keir Starmer, backing the wrong horse in every race, attacking Brexit, trying to reverse it. Brexit's been a success, let me tell you. I'm a Remainer that's telling you Brexit has been a success. We are #1 in the G7 for economic growth at the moment. We're doing brilliantly. But look, what's your view? gbnews.com/your say. Tonight's top pundits are the brilliant broadcaster and journalist Linda Jubilee, former Conservative MP, and now a man free to speak his mind, the one and only Sir Michael Fabricant, and ethnographer and academic Dr. Lisa Mackenzie. Great to see all three of you. Now, I will say to you, Dr. Lisa Mackenzie, that I don't like to attack people on the basis of, personal qualities. I think you play the ball, not the man,
That's right,
as it were.
Yeah.
But I think that someone's character and judgment is central to their job as Prime Minister. And that's why I'm really worried about Sir Keir Starmer being in number 10.
No, and I agree with you. I've been worried about him for a long time. 2011, I was doing research as an academic, and I did some research on the 2011 riots, which is when Sir Keir Starmer started to pop up, when he was opening courts for 24 hours and making sure that people who had stolen water went to prison for 2.5 years. So Keir Starmer does what he's always done. He's protecting the status quo. That's what he does. And as a working class woman, what I particularly find disgusting actually about all of these Labour people is that they have purposefully over the last 10, 12 years thrown working class people under the bus and at the same time tried to sort of use them as well. Angela Rayner, I'm sorry, but you know what? She makes me sick. She actually makes me sick.
Well, she's a very popular figure within the Labour movement.
I'm sure well, not with me, she's not. Today there was a interview with her where she sort of said, well, the reason why I've been given clothes and the reason why I've taken this is because I'm a working class woman. That is an absolute disgrace for every working class woman in this country, because working class women don't get an easy ride. They don't get things given to them. The very fact that they are working class and a woman means that their lives are difficult. Angela Rayner is representing nobody but herself and her own career interests, and that really represents this Labour government for me.
Supporters of Sir Keir Starmer would argue there's not too much wrong with his judgment. He's Prime Minister with a landslide.
Well, even his supporters have had a lot of trouble justifying recent events, that's for sure. I mean, in fact, one of the things that is a standout for me in the last few days is that it's his supporters that have been the issue. They have come out with these woolly words, these kind of mealy-mouthed explanations about what has gone on.
And Starmer,
they have done more harm than good.
Right, and Starmer digging in, which you're not just an expert on politics and business, but PR as well. I mean, Labour's handling of this has left a lot to be desired, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. On every level, they have failed to get ahead of the narrative. And in fact, they shouldn't have to get ahead of the narrative. They wouldn't have had to do this if they hadn't made unforced errors. But the fact is, having done that, you need to get ahead, and they're not doing it. They're just massaging things around so that they can say, we've ticked this box, transparency ticked. And actually, the great British public aren't so much interested in has it been transparent, is should it have been done in the first place?
Yes. Michael, of course, Boris Johnson, when he was Prime Minister, was limped from one disaster to another, and ultimately that cost him his political career, particularly Partygate and the Chris Pincher scandal. How would you compare Starmer's alleged crimes? Because many would argue that no rules have been broken here.
I think it's all about the difference in character and ability between the two. Look, Boris is not a manager, never claimed to be a manager. He's like Ronald Reagan, really, a man full of ideas. What he wasn't doing, which Ronald Reagan did do, is surround himself with able people who could control him. But the problem with Keir Starmer is he's devoid of ideas. He came into government with no plan. I've seen him in the House of Commons.
Let's be honest. I mean, they've sorted out the industrial action, which Rishi Sunak wasn't able to do. The strikes are now over. A deal with the junior doctors, a deal with the train drivers. They're getting on with running the country and fixing a Tory mess.
They're acting like Robin Hood, and they're stealing from the pensioners to give to train drivers. The average wage of a train driver is £74,000 a year.
Aren't they having to do the cut to the winter fuel allowance because of the Tory economic mess that they inherited?
For 6 months, the Labour government have had full access to the Treasury books. They knew what the situation was. At the time of the election, they said there wouldn't be any cuts. And there needn't have been cuts, because the amount of money given to junior doctors, who still say, by the way, that they will go on strike, and the amount of money they've given to the train drivers and others, it's easy to surrender. That's not negotiation. His mind is not agile.
But isn't it fair to say that Labour have made progress on some key issues already, pushing forward the green agenda, getting Britain to be sort of, energy independent?
Well, so far they're talking.
Yeah.
What actually has happened, that's quite difficult to do. But one thing I will say is that what I think has been a mistake by Keir Starmer is this drip feed of information about how we all need to work harder, we all need to try harder. It's going to get harder before it gets better again. It will take 10 years to turn the NHS round. Now, that's simply, according to this week, I listened to Mohamed El Arin, the chief economist from Allianz, and he's saying you can't drip feed that kind of information into the public arena.
It's going to destroy the economy.
It's frightening.
I'll tell you what we're going to do, because feelings are running very high in the studio. We're going to come back to this with the papers, because let me tell you that it is all over the front pages tomorrow. Labour civil war. MPs at conference absolutely furious with their own Prime Minister. Will Keir Starmer, will he survive this political storm? Will he still be leader of the party at the next election?